Yo, what's up, people? This is your boy Vaughn B. On our podcast on Sundays, we discuss movies and whatnot, and we give our opinions. So it looks like the critical drinker decided to give his opinion. So I thought I'd do a little reaction to it. All right, let's get into it. All right, here we go.
You can't handle the truth. I'll be back. You're gonna need a bigger boat. May the force be with you. I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse. Go ahead, make my day. I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You know what's funny is you don't miss the one-liners until you don't get them anymore. So those like are classics.
Yo, Adrian, I did it. Now, when I read out those quotes, I made a point of not imitating the accents or the intonations, and I gave you no visual clues whatsoever to help you out. They came from a wide range of different movies from different genres, different decades and styles, so there's no common thread to pick up on that might help you out. But does any of that matter? Nope, because I'll bet that pretty much every one of you could name not just the movie they came from, but also the actors who said them and probably picture the exact scene in your heads. Let's try another one, shall we? Luke Skywalker, Captain Kirk, James Bond, Sarah.
This is another example of stuff that you take for granted when you have it in abundance, but when you no longer have it, it almost feels nostalgic, which is kind of strange to say.
Sarah Connor, Sherlock Holmes, Rocky Balboa, Bruce Wayne, Marty McFly, Indiana Jones, Forrest Gump, Hannibal Lecter. The moment I say those names, it instantly conjures up an image of that person in your mind, the actor that played them, the most iconic moments they took part in, and even the emotions that the character inspires. That right there, my friends, is the power of the cultural footprint. It's the ability of films to transcend the medium they started in and become a living, breathing part of our culture, referenced and quoted and thought about by generation after generation.
A good movie can change the world. It can make people see things that they wouldn't normally see from a different perspective, because you may know a lot of different people, but that don't mean they have different perspectives than the one that you have. So sometimes you are required to see something on the outside to make you go, oh, okay, I didn't see it like that.
Here's the problem though. Not a single one of them was created in the past 20 years.
Fuck.
Yeah, that's kind of worrying, isn't it? And before you start accusing me of cherry-picking my examples just to prove a point, I can tell you that I looked up 6 different lists of the 100 best movie quotes of all time for this video, read every single one from start to finish, and not a single one belonged to a movie made after 2005. Look up any list of iconic movie characters and I can pretty much guarantee they'll all be from 2010 or earlier, and even if they do exist in newer movies like the Marvel or DC universes, the characters themselves will have been created decades earlier in books, comics or TV shows. What you're seeing today is just another iteration of something that was invented generations ago, just another...
The thing about writing and creating memorable characters, in order for you to actually do that, you kind of need to have some sort of life-changing event in your life. It doesn't have to be anything major. It can be marriage or something like something small, but something that changes your view and allows you to be able to express yourself a little bit better. A lot of writers nowadays all have the same kind of focus, and there's diversity of, color and gender and all that stuff, but there's no diversity on thought. And you kind of need that to go back and forth, because they got a lot of stuff that was created by people who had opposing viewpoints, conservative, liberal, that kind of thing. But they were able to come together and create things. And you get a more true type of character when you have that kind of dichotomy happening.
meal made by someone else reheated in the cultural microwave. One of the saddest emails I ever read was from a young subscriber of mine complaining that their generation doesn't really have anything to call their own. No unique cultural touchstone they can point to and say, see that? That was ours. That was our Star Wars, our Lord of the Rings, our rock and roll. Everything they see and watch and listen to now is either a continuation of some old franchise or a remake of something that came out decades ago. And all of this got me thinking, wow, we're living in a bit of a cultural wasteland these days, aren't we?
Yeah, I remember having this conversation with someone about like music, and my generation, you get hip hop. My parents is soul and R&B, that kind of thing. And then like if you go back all the generations, you can name a type of musical genre that was created in their youth. And like for some millennials and Gen Z and all that, there is not that. All what their music is a derivative of what came before them, like he said. There's no, and I think someone said something about the top selling tickets now are mostly people who are older millennials. There's no Gen Z, there's like one person on the list who's Gen Z. So I can see where this guy's coming from is there are no young, up and coming anything. Like they push them like Timothy Chalamet. I think that's what his name is. He's been pushed, but it's like they keep trying, but it doesn't really stick, you know?
Not really creating much of anything new or memorable anymore. We're just rehashing stuff that's already been done before, making copies of copies that gradually degenerate into mediocrity and failure. I mean, just take a look at the 3 big movies in theaters this month. Jurassic World, the 7th movie in the Jurassic Park franchise. Fantastic Four, the 3rd movie version of these characters in the past 20 years, based on a comic from 60 years ago. And Superman, the 3rd iteration in the past 20 years, not counting TV shows and video games of course, based on a comic from 80 years ago. I mean, don't get me wrong, they make money, that's for sure. Well, maybe not Fantastic Four, but you get my point. Jurassic World's on track to make $1 billion, and Superman will probably do okay as well, although even that's looking a bit shaky right now. But box office revenue isn't the same as cultural impact, and that is the big difference here. This time next year, in fact, fuck it, probably this time next month, nobody's even gonna remember a single scene, character, or line of dialogue from Jurassic World Afterbirth. Shit, man, I can barely even remember it now.
The one thing I do remember is the raft that he was holding on to was somehow dinosaur proof. Like they basically should cover everything in whatever that material was.
Nobody's going to be quoting or referencing James Gunn's Superman by James Gunn by the time it leaves theaters.
No.
They're the movie equivalent of a fast food meal, something to be consumed quickly and then forgotten about just as quickly, so that if it wasn't for the heartburn and the explosive diarrhea later in the day, you probably wouldn't be sure if you'd even eaten it. The Avatar movies are probably the peak example of all this.
Oh my God, yeah. I can't even tell you how the last one actually ended. It made like $2 billion or something like that. And yeah, like half the movie I forgot. I mean, and if you would have asked me like a month later about plot points, I couldn't tell you. It came in, it was like, woo, wow, the water looks great. And then it just went out, just went away.
Of them makes more money than a small African country, and the next one will be no different, but nobody ever talks about them. Nobody posts fan theories or recites their most famous lines or references iconic characters in other works because, well, there's nothing to reference. They're nothing but hollow spectacle, devoid of deeper meaning or substance, as pointless and empty as that hotel in North Korea with all the lights on the outside that's been sat unoccupied for 30 years. Even Avengers Endgame, arguably the single biggest movie event of all time, is nothing more than a footnote in film history at this point. Nobody talks about it anymore, except maybe to reference it as the turning point where the MCU started its downward plunge into abject shittiness. I guess
they do talk about the all girls scene that pretty much most theaters that either got silence or kind of a grumble or sometimes outright booing.
Part of the problem there is that we've been wowed by visual spectacle so many times now that it creates a kind of numbness in the audience. You're never really going to replicate the sheer impact of that first Star Destroyer in A New Hope, or the T-Rex attack in Jurassic Park, or the rain-soaked neon cityscapes of Blade Runner.
To be honest, though, those were the first times that stuff was done. So you can't. It's kind of hard to top the first of things. So no, yeah.
Because we've seen it all before now.
Yeah.
It might still be impressive, but it's rarely memorable. But films are more than just bright colours on screen. The most memorable characters and moments in film history are usually just regular old people in normal places delivering lines that actually mean something because of good writing without half the universe having to explode in the backgrounds. And we're just not getting them anymore. And it's not just films. It feels like every aspect of modern culture has been weirdly dulled and toned down and homogenized. I mean, come on, you must have noticed it yourself, even if it was only subconsciously. That weird feeling of inertia, of stagnation, like we're not really growing or advancing anymore, we're just sort of continuing.
You know what's crazy is you used to be able to pick out Burger King and McDonald's and Wendy's from a distance. Like you didn't have to be able to see the actual lettering. It's just that the way the building was made, they were built differently. Now everything looks like banks. It's like you can't really tell what is what until you get close enough to see the letters on the side or the signage. Go look up old pictures of McDonald's and what it used to look like. Well, a lot of this stuff I think was kind of done on purpose. Why? I don't know.
Like butter scraped over too much bread, you might say. Try this. Pick any decade of the 20th century, and I reckon most people could probably identify it based on the clothes, the technology, the music, or the films. Each one had its own unique identity, its own fads and fashions and zeitgeists, from the rock and roll of the 50s to the angst and counterculture of the 70s to the rise of the internet in the 90s. But at some point, probably around the late 2000s or the early 2010s, it all seemed to slow down, and then, well, stop.
Yeah.
There were no definable fashions anymore. Technology became iterative instead of revolutionary. Pop music became homogenized covers of songs from a decade earlier, and the era of the remake and the reboot kicked off in Hollywood big time.
Well, the thing about music is they figured out the chord structures of songs that were most popular, right? So that is why all your pop music sounds kind of the same, because there's certain chord progressions that make you feel a certain way. So that is incorporated into most modern music. And when you do that, and when you instead of making something as a discovery, it's more like a process. Kind of like what happened with the Marvel movies. It becomes a process of this, do this at this particular time, and then do this and do that and do this, and then you'll have a popular song. Yes, you will, but it will be a brief popular song until the next one that does the exact same thing come out. So because nothing stands out because everything is the same. And that pretty much applies to like everything.
We stopped moving forward and we began looking backwards, and it feels like we've been stuck in that loop ever since. And quite simply, that is not good for any of us. So where's it all heading? Are we all just circling the drain of cultural oblivion, or are we on the brink of a new golden age of enlightenment and progress? Well, for my own sanity, and yours I suspect, I want to believe in the latter. I hope that what we're seeing now is the tail end of a cultural era that's been kept on life support way beyond its natural time by corporate greed, laziness, and risk aversion. A lot of the dusty old franchises that our parents' generation grew up on and we've been clinging to like comfort blankets for decades are reaching the end of their cultural relevance now, mostly because of horrendous mismanagement and creative retardation, but what the fuck? Ultimately, it was gonna happen anyway no matter what. Hollywood's own incompetence has just sped up the process. I think we're reaching that tipping point now, and maybe I was wrong at the beginning when I described the modern landscape as a cultural wasteland. Maybe it's more like a cultural dam that's been holding back the flood for too long. The cracks are starting to appear, and sooner or later, it's gonna burst. And if that's the case, it'll be interesting to see what's left after the floodwaters recedes. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
All right. Yeah, that was interesting. AI is probably going to make this situation worse, but it could also make it better because it'll allow. So what happened is you get a lot of gatekeeping where there are stories that could possibly be the next Star Wars or whatever, but doesn't get greenlit because the person who's in charge of greenlighting things doesn't think that, it doesn't fit whatever thing that they're trying to do at the time. With AI, that will get rid of a lot of the stuff in the middle where you will be able to make things that are of a higher quality than you would normally be able to do because you just don't have the money. So it could either go that way or everything just get homogenized into like uh fluff. And if you are used to Salisbury steak and it's all you've had, and at some point you just look for the best Salisbury steak and you're never offered actual steak like a ribeye, then would you know that if there's anything better? And that's the problem with a lot of younger people. They're offered nothing but Salisbury steak. At some point, maybe we will get another Steven Spielberg or whatever when all the AI stuff settles down and whatever. So I don't know. But that was pretty interesting. And if you made it to the end of this, thank you. And please like, share, and subscribe and all that fun stuff. And later.